Good time zone internet. Welcome to Design Club, the only show on the internet where my voice cracks imperceptibly in a way that makes me feel self-conscious as I do our intro. I'm your humble host, Will, joined as always by my pal, Geoff. Hi, Geoff. How's it going?
You didn't say the line.
No, I didn't. I wanted to see what would happen if I didn't say the line, and what I was hoping for did in fact happen.
But I am doing well, thanks, Will. I am Geoffrey Zatkin. I'm the studio director of Extra Credit Studios, which is extra credits, extra history, actually, and more. Joined by my buddy Will
and
over on this side. I'm pointing the correct direction because I'm mirrored.
Yeah.
Who is our humble Twitch overlord.
That's right. And I'm so humbled that when asked to make my own job title, I made the job title Twitch Overlord. It's great. I love it. It's fantastic.
As one does. And we are here today because on our pre-talk, which we do a couple days before of what should we talk about in a couple days, because we like to do a tiny bit of planning, I mentioned a thing I'd seen.
Yeah.
And that led to a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
So rather than Will and I spending an hour on that discussion, we're just like, let's do it on stream because it's, to me, interesting.
Yeah.
And hopefully to all of you.
So, Geoff, let's start with your story. So you were at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yep. So hey, I live in San Diego.
Yep.
I go to San Diego Comic-Con because it's in San Diego.
Right there.
And why would you not? And also, having been a professional in the industry for a while, the video game industry, one of the things you can apply for at Comic-Con is called a Pro Pass. And they basically are like, here, have a free all access pass. And these are fairly coveted items. And I've been getting one for over 2 decades now. And so every single year I head down to Comic-Con and I cool hunt. I look around, I'm like, what's new? What's interesting? What are their 40 booths advertising this year? You know, what do I see the same merch? Like there's a whole bunch of stuff. Just like, it's a fun place to scout.
Right. And I think that it's also important to note that the San Diego Comic-Con, if you're not familiar, is not merely comics. It has expanded to be nerd culture, I would say, as a fair
nerd
analysis.
And pop culture.
Yeah.
San Diego Comic-Con has a couple of interesting idiosyncrasies that actually make, so we'll give this some more context. It's been going on for a long time, like 30 or 40 plus years. No, wait, they celebrated their 50th anniversary recently, I think.
Yeah.
Like it is one of the oldest continuous running Comic-Cons. And San Diego has a massive convention center. And by massive, I mean lengthwise, if you take over the whole thing, which they do, it's got to be like at least 7 or 8 football fields long, maybe longer, and at least a football field and a half, maybe 2 wide. Like the square footage of this, and they have these big partitions that they can like slide across so they can divide it to run like 4 or 5 conventions at the same time if they want to.
Right.
Or in this case, one massive one.
Yep.
And San Diego being close to Los Angeles, all of Hollywood, basically, this is the con that they cross over with.
Yep.
So it's comic books, movies, TV shows, books, and basically all the things that kind of mesh between comics and movies, which means it's hit books and TV and streaming. And there's enough video game studios in San Diego and around that some video game studio, there used to be more. Now there's some, and merch. Like it's basically all of the merch surrounding comics, books, TV shows, movies, graphic novel, like all of that. And it's massive.
It feels like the kind of place where if you wanted to, you could just get a 1-day pass and just go shopping and not see anything else, because it is very street market like in its aesthetic and appeal, right? Like it's the closest most Americans will get to a street market like you'd see in Europe or Asia. We don't do those here as much because here streets are for cars, which is weird, but like conventions are like that.
And it is overwhelmingly populated. Like I go on preview night, which is if you buy a 4-day pass or a pro, you can go the night before it officially kicks off. They open it for 3 hours, and I just walk the showroom floor for 3 hours. And in 3 hours, I actually can't see everything on the showroom floor.
Right.
And this is just the people selling things. there's whole other levels for like talks and all the other goodness. And Hall H is the infamous place where you will camp out. There are people who camp out a day or two ahead to get to a specific panel. It's the one that holds thousands of people, and it's where if you're announcing the next Avengers movie, all of the Avengers cast shows up on stage to answer questions, or the next Harry Potter movie, or whatever the big movie is.
Yep.
Like, that's the place. So it has a long history of being a place you go to see and buy things. And
it's a place that exhibitors and people in the industry go to announce cool big things and to get eyes on them. And that is the other big part of this, right? That we're going to kind of focus on is you saw something there that was like an interesting idea, and they're trying to get eyes on it, right? Both because they want people to get excited about it and because they want people to invest in it.
Yes. And so I didn't actually see it at Comic-Con, because one of the other big things about cons, and I can say this for the Game Developers Conference and E3 and PAX and a whole bunch of other cons, is one of the advantages of conventions is everybody goes to a convention. So if you're doing, say, a business, or if you're a games dev studio looking for work or other things, you might show up just to talk to the people. Like, forget the things you can buy or the panels. Everybody else is there, so you're there too to do the networking or whatever it is. And so there are a lot of things that are Comic-Con adjacent that actually aren't part of the con. If you are lucky enough to own a restaurant or a movie theater or something within, say, 1 square mile of the San Diego Convention Center, you can just rent it out for egregious amounts of money to hold private parties or showings or other things. And we got an invitation actually through the Extra Credits email to, if we wanted to come see a sneak peek of a new console launch. And I was like, ooh, sure, let's go see the sneak peek of the new console launch, not knowing at all what it was going to be.
Right.
And I was completely surprised at what it was going to be, because it was not something that was at all on my radar.
Right. So I think it would be fair. Geoff showed me the promo material. That's all public. None of this is like weird or insider.
Can we look at it for a second to contextualize?
Yeah, vamp, and then yes.
Okay. And so on Friday of Comic-Con, which ran Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I went with a select group of people, which turned out to be a lot smaller than I thought, to basically a movie theater they'd rented out to get a media look and then a hands-on of a new console that a group is putting out. And the branding is what surprised me the most on it, which is Rubik's branded, like the Rubik's Cube. So Rubik's does have a history. Rubik's is a fairly ubiquitous pop culture thing. Like, if you show up somebody a Rubik's Cube, almost everybody knows what it is. It has what they call kind of deep market penetration or brand awareness. And Rubik's has put out a whole bunch of other things since the Rubik's Cube, most of which have been puzzle-based, usually square, but occasionally circular things that you can twist.
Yep.
And this is a digital thing that kind of looks like a Rubik's Cube, but is set up to be a lot more. Wow, it had a cartoon at one point, I see from Spanish. I did not know about the Rubik's Cube cartoon.
Yeah. So this is it. This is...
It's called the Wow Cube.
Right.
I believe they said we were the first group of people to get a public viewing of it, though they've done a couple of like game dev jams and they've like shown other people to like get testimonials. But this was their first, let's put it in front of people in a press conference style thing and see what happens. Right. And I believe they kept it small because they wanted to make sure it didn't blow up.
Yeah. So let's, so this kind of thing, First, what are your first impressions, chat, of a handheld cubic console, right? This is weird. And your first impressions, right? I want you to hold on to those as we talk, because that's actually going to be
huge.
Yeah, it's a huge part of this. There's like two broad hemispheres to the thing that we're going to talk about, which is how does something like this happen, right? Because it's cool and weird and different, right? And part of it is what you think about it. So hold in your mind what your first impression when we tell you that this is a console for playing games and for entertainment that is a rotatable digital Rubik's Cube.
So notice it is a 2x2 versus a 3x3 structure.
Yeah.
But Will, can you scroll down? Is there a picture of somebody holding it just so we see size?
I can scroll down. Yeah. So it's about this big. We have some.
So it's basically Rubik's Cube size, and you can see it glows. And so at a 2x2 versus a 3x3, what it means is there are 24 small, basically iPhone surfaces on this. And that is a weird.
This is their promo material. I'm just showing the promo material as it happens. And then
actually, and you can kind of, let's see sleeping one right there. And you see things on all the sides. It is completely rotatable. You can rotate and twist just like you could a Rubik's Cube. And the internal guts, which they showed us, basically allow it feels good when you rotate it. It is a nice weight to hold. It rotates well. And it keeps track of where every other facing is. Because it's important if you're rotating playing a game, which we can get to in a moment, that it knows which of the 24 screens is facing in which direction and is connected to which other part.
Right.
Because if you scroll down a little bit, you can see somebody playing with it kind of like a Rubik's Cube, where the one above is in kind of sleep mode as a fish tank where the fish are like swimming around all the way around it and you can look at it from any position.
Yeah. So I was
intrigued. I saw what it was and I'm like, this is interesting.
Right.
But it also opens up, and we'll get to in a moment, how hard the road is for this thing to have any chance of success.
Right.
There's a lot. There's actually so much. And having been part of the early VR development in kind of the bleeding edge area. And for those who don't know, part of my past is I ran a studio called Experiment 7, or co-ran it with a buddy. And we were in some of the early VR, mostly in the Oculus, but also in the PlayStation and the Steam ecosystems. And we devved for the Gear, the Go, the Rift 2, the Rift 3, the Quest, kind of that whole line, as well as the PlayStation VR and basically the Steam SDK, which let you play it on any number of Steam-compatible VR devices. Yeah. We released 3 games. The last of which was second of which was a licensed version of Dungeons and Dragons for an animated battle chess. The third of which was Catan in VR. So we had the official license. I got to work with the sons of the guy who made the game and Catan Studio and Asmodee Studio. It was really cool. And we'd gone in basically saying, we're going to work with licenses on this specifically. And this is because as a new platform, we wanted people to immediately see something they recognized and go, oh, I should buy that.
Yeah.
Because familiarity is a big thing on a new product. And so anyway, we had best-selling games on there and eventually ended up shutting our studio down because for when we were doing VR, even as the bestseller, we weren't making enough money. And part of this, and this is going to be very important, is called the hardware install base problem. And the easy way to think of it is, if you were making Angry Birds, Will.
Yep.
And I said, so we're making Angry Birds. Yep. If there were 100 iPhones, we could sell 100 copies of Angry Birds. If there was 1 million iPhones, we could sell 1 million copies of Angry Birds. If you're deving on new hardware, what you're always worried about is the install base.
Yep.
Will they sell enough of these that the game you make, if it's really good, can sell enough copies to pay back your investment and hopefully make you some more money?
Yep.
And that's a really hard thing for new platforms. And it's really risky for new developers to do that.
Yeah.
As I said, we were venture funded for this. That means we had venture capital money, 3 games, best selling, and we just looked at it and said, they haven't sold enough hardware yet. We're going to responsibly shut down the studio or put it on mothball, keep the games going, 6-month leeway for all of our people to find them new jobs because we didn't want to be a company that's hey, guys, it's Friday. Sorry, no more studio.
Yeah.
But install base is huge.
Yeah.
And that is one of the many, many problems you have to do when you're making something new. And I saw this and it immediately gave me flashbacks of VR.
Yeah.
And I started telling Will about all of the trouble that even just talking about Oculus, who's now Meta, all of the stuff they had to do to have any chance of success And that's everything this group is also going to have to do.
Correct.
To have any chance of success.
Yeah, I want to tackle a couple of questions from chat because I think they're really good.
Sorry, I was monologuing.
No, that was a good preamble monologue that we needed to get out of the way, establishing both why we're talking about this and how this relates to VR. Because you maybe look at the title and you're like, this doesn't seem like VR, and the answer is. We'll explain more.
But VR, but it has the same problems of getting adoption.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So someone asked why 2x2 and not standard 3x3. I have a really easy answer for this.
And then I can give the official one.
Right. Too. Which is, do you know how many additional connections you need to make to do a 3x3? And also, a 3x3 is structurally very different than a 2x2. The internal workings of a 3x3 are very different. You also have fixed cubes in the middle of each side, which can cause weirdness, right? But like, there's a structural choice between those two that may not have anything to do with product familiarity. And what's the official answer, Geoff?
The official answer is they actually prototyped it, and they can actually replicate it somehow on the 2x2 cubes. So they're like, oh, we could do it and we may in the future. But I also read behind what they were saying so remember, part of the user interface on this is twisting it in different directions. 2x2 is very easy to know what you're twisting and you don't get lost on which part you're twisting. A 3x3, twisting gets a lot harder and twisting the thing you want to and aligning it gets a lot harder. And so I think really, honestly, for their user interface paradigm, or excuse me, user interaction paradigm of how do you interact with it, 3x3 was just too complicated.
I also think that makes sense.
And so I think it was for a variety of reasons. Actually, going to call one out right here. Yeah, VR isn't a platform, it's a technology, but also Meta or Oculus, which was the biggest, like in the Oculus ecosystem, they were making consoles using VR technology.
Right.
And so I'm kind of just compressing them together.
Right. It's like how we talk about iOS and Android. And even though Android is a infinitely fragmented ecosystem of tens of thousands of little itty bitty offshoot versions, the Android ecosystem is a mess. We talk about Android as a platform, as a console, as a launch vector, right? Yeah. When we talk about it. And in the same way, I think VR applies. Yeah. Then
Digiflower, we'll get to this question. I guarantee you. Don't worry.
And then so let's start out with a simple question, which is a great segue. And thank you to Spin Dash for this. What does success mean for something like this? Do we have a metric for success for this, or is it just we'll know it when we see it?
I think it really depends on the goal. So like VR wanted to basically become I keep using the word ubiquitous, but a ubiquitous, well-adopted technology.
Yep.
And therefore, the groups like Meta, who bought Oculus, would have they'd basically be the front runners in a whole new form factor of consumer hardware. Like, I think that was their goal. That was why they got acquired. Like, some people like VR is cool. Meta buying Oculus was like, we think this is going to be big. We also think the metaverse is coming. This is a step along the way. Let's own the biggest group and get there.
Right.
So my guess for WowCube is success is actually based on their multi-year plan they laid out at the press conference, which is all public at this point. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it. They want to be interesting this year. I think it's like toy of the year next year. And the year after that be basically a standard thing everybody has.
Okay.
Which I think is a little ambitious, but it's good to have ambitious goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And like aiming for toy of the year for something like this is a sensible launch goal, right? Like it is lofty, yes, but no one launches a new toy that requires this much engineering and this much behind the scenes and goes, I guess it's just going to be a fine launch. Like, you are aiming for as high as you can, because it's all toy of the year is also like a bunch of free press and stuff. So, okay. So for success, depends on the thing, but I think that's what they're looking for. Right. Okay. So we're talking about consoles and console accessories. That are new. what do we mean by new? We should probably establish this, right? Because
so new is hard.
Yes.
And one of the hardest things for new, and this gets back to why people aren't buying VR games. One of the hardest things for new is convincing people they need it. Because if it's new, they don't. And it's been a long time since we've had, I'll call it, new consumer entertainment technology.
Right.
And let me tell you what I mean by that. If you're like, hey, Geoff, I bought a new phone recently. Well, phones aren't new. Like we've had smartphones for a while, and smartphones came from dumb phones, and dumb phones came from the phones that were in your house. Like phones as a concept to people are more than 100-year-old technology. And just because they get smaller, faster, or do more stuff, you don't have to sell people on the idea of phone. They know what a phone does. It's not a new tech. If you're like, Geoff, I have a tablet. Well, tablets came from laptops, and laptops came from desktops. And that's been 50 years, roughly 40 years since we've had like people selling Apple IIes and other things.
And before
35 since the Macintosh.
Yep.
Like computers aren't a new concept, and therefore computer to laptop, laptop to tablet. Again, it's not a new tech. People are like, oh, it's just a computer I can carry around. Oh, it's now a flat computer. I can like use my hand. Like you're not selling them a new concept of hardware.
And I'm actually going to go one further. I'm going to say that there's an additional level, which is the way that people interact with the technology, because a computer is just a fancy typewriter, right?
Or it was initially, for many people, sold as that.
Correct. But that the way that people interact with it through a keyboard, right, goes back to the OG typewriter. And so my list of like truly novel inventions that change the way that people like
hold that one sec. Okay,
yeah.
So phone, computer, TVs have been around a century plus. Again, I'm just saying consumer entertainment that people interact with. Consoles were an offshoot of computers. People are like, hey, I can play games on a computer. It's like, oh, here's a dedicated computer that hooks up to my TV. VCRs, 50 plus years. If you kind of think about how you interact, like listening to music was a radio, it got smaller to a Walkman, it got smaller to your phone. You were already putting headphones on to listen to those. So earbuds and things coming in. Like if you really think about it, new technology, that's a whole new paradigm that you have to tell people this is why it's useful, is exceedingly rare. We refine things a lot, but it's really hard to find a new thing. And so that's part of the trouble of new stuff. So Will, you're going to say a couple things you thought were new.
Yeah. So this is, to the best of my knowledge, the best that we're going to get for like new. Like this is my category: typewriter, computer mouse, Wii/motion controls. I'm going to say motion controls as exemplified by the Wii. Because the Wii was really the only place. Like, remember, there were other places that did it, and you would have to struggle to remember where you put your Kinect or whatever the PlayStation thing with the multicolored wands. Anyway.
And actually, and it's mostly like, and you notice, the Wii got it in because they bundled it as a console.
Yes.
That happened to have a new interface paradigm, kind of like the mouse.
Yes.
Or peripheral paradigm.
Yeah.
And chat, I see you like, we are lumping some stuff together, but you kind of see where we're going on this. Like if you're telling somebody something is new. So for example, VR had the problem and still does. It is a completely new technology.
Yep.
Like putting on a thing over your face to see a whole new world is not something we have experienced. We've seen, examples in movies. But for somebody saying, oh, I know why I need a computer, I know why I need a TV, I know why I need a phone, I know why I need a VR headset, people aren't sure. Yeah. And that's one of the hardest parts of new hardware, is convincing people that there is something that they need that they can't live without on it. Kind of the killer app or the killer experience. And to date, VR has had some amazing games and experiences, but it hasn't crossed into the threshold of, it has the thing that is so good that everybody has to pick it up.
There are two borderline killer app unique VR experiences And one of the big problems with VR is that one of them you can do on desktop. And those two are VR Chat and Beat Saber. And VR Chat has a desktop client that you don't need VR for. And that's, in my opinion and experience with VR, and I've owned 2 different headsets, and I actually, I use my PSVR 2 on the regular.
Man, I can't tell you how many headsets I've owned doing VR development.
Yeah, right. But that's about it, right? So it's so these are for and the other thing that we should mention is that we're only mentioning the things which got big enough to make a dent in the industry, a size that we can notice them and reference them to talk about, right? There have been so many things that just, right? They just came in.
New hot. And people, and 2 years later, people
right?
Because it didn't get enough market penetration. And so VR, remember when I was saying the market, the hardware in the install base, we need enough hardware sold that people running dev studios can go make the cool stuff that makes people want to move over to it.
Yep.
And this is the reason that you see so few people equivalently hopping on the bandwagon to go make VR games or other things like that on the new bleeding edge technology, is they're not sure if there's going to be enough of an audience there to make the thing.
Yeah, let me address another one real quick, because we do need to, we've been talking about VR, we're going to crank it down, because this is a really great point. Dark Wolf mentions that Disney has several VR experiences. We are not talking about installations and entertainment facilities. We're not
that's not consumer hardware.
Correct. We're not talking about a VR arcade. We're not talking about a 4D thing. We're not talking about stuff at Disney. We're talking about at-home consumer install-based stuff, because the clientele is very different, right?
Yeah.
That's a
and so
very...
is the hardware, the development. Disney saying, we're going to make some tech that we can put in a Disney park to be part of the experience, is a whole different proposition than Oculus saying, we'd like to make sure there's 3 or 4 million VR headsets out there that people are buying at Costco.
Right, because you're totally correct that there were places that did this kind of technology before, right? I remember one of the older ones that was around when I was a kid there was a helicopter game that was like a first-person kind of shooter that you pulled the thing down over your eyes, kind of like a VR headset, and it used a fixed mode. It was tethered, and it could tell the angle based on the tether. Right. So it was it had a fixed actuation point, so it could rotate 360 and pitch pretty significantly, so you could turn around.
That's cool.
Yeah. But again, that's an arcade thing, not my PSVR 2 that I can play in my room. Right. And so again, different, but you're totally correct though. So we do need to crank that down.
So anyway, looking at the WoW Cube and at their ambition reminded me of how hard a time Oculus had getting market penetration and becoming big enough that they could get good devs. And I started listing some of these off to Will, all of the trouble that this group was going to face. And we realized it was an episode. Yeah. Because not a lot of people think about how hard it is to make a new console. Yep. And I'm not even going to say general consumer entertainment thing, just a new console. Right. And Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo put out a new console a little less than once a decade. Yep. And they have it hard too, but it's significantly easier. And as we walk through this list of here's everything you actually have to do that you're not thinking about, I can kind of point out new group trouble versus existing group trouble. Actually, is that interesting, Will?
I think it is. I think it helps to put it in perspective, right? Because so we can use this first one as an example, right? The first thing that you got to do in order to do any of this is you need funding. Yep. Well,
you need money, because this is all going to get expensive when you listen to everything we're going to do.
Right.
And this isn't like a couple 100,000 or a couple million funding. This is probably 8, more realistically 9 figures worth of funding.
Right. And so when we talk about that, right, we're not even talking you need funding to begin, right? You need funding to put time and effort into people living while they start thinking of the full idea. P.S. By the way, brief aside from a producer standpoint, there is currently a major thunderstorm. If we go off the air, I do apologize. It's because
there's a what? Sorry,
there's a major thunderstorm rolling through right now, and it's quite loud. My mic's gated in, but there's a possibility I'll lose power. So if we do, I'm sorry. So
funding,
yeah,
straight up. And like, so if you look at Sony or Microsoft, or you look at the PlayStation, Xbox, or the Switch, or they have funding. They've been selling hardware for the previous, 8 or 9 years, and games to take all the revenue or bring back all the revenue they'd spent on doing development of the previous ones. Plus, they're all part of big corporations, and so have kind of synergistic things in there, being part of Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, respectively. Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest issues, which is where do we get the money for this? For the existing consoles has already been solved, which is they have a big, steady, ongoing revenue stream that brings them in money to pay for development of their next thing.
Right. And so it's kind of a catch-22, right? Because
I actually heard the thunder there.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. Normally, it's not a big deal, but I've heard my battery backups click over a couple of times. For a new group, right, we get into this catch-22, which is you need time and effort to go find funding, but you need funding to get the time and effort to go find funding, right? So you've already got this huge gridlock problem that you have to solve. You need to essentially have money fall out of somewhere or be able to pitch to someone who is just going to give you money versus the big three who are just like, yeah, we've got war chests for days, right? Yep. And that I think that's like a great beginning to how hard this is.
Let's talk about the last 2 big consoles to come in were the Xbox, where Microsoft said, we think we should be a big thing in gaming on other than just PC. Yeah. We have the funds to go develop a thing.
Right.
And Steam, with the Steam Deck, coming in, they're like, hey, we have unlimited money. Maybe we should make another place that people can play our Steam games. How about a handheld console?
Yep.
And so, again, the last 2 groups to actually make something big in this vertical came in with equivalently unlimited money to spend on it.
Correct. And when we say unlimited, we mean their money is is several orders of magnitude removed from the highest possible cost to achieve success in this vector, right? Okay, so let's say magically that we've gotten funding all figured out. Funding is solved. Now I actually have to go and make the thing. How do I
design the hardware?
Okay.
Let's start with the hardware, not make the thing, because making the thing is a whole bunch of steps.
Well, right. What I mean is like there's get the money and then make the thing. So let's begin the million steps to make the thing.
Yeah. And so, and like one of the first things for a console is you have to figure out what is different about this console than every other one, and what are you actually making? And so there's a lot of technology solutions that come in there. And for the last couple things we've seen attempted, mostly in VR and here with the WoW Cube, one of the big things that they're also saying is we're introducing a whole new control paradigm with VR and display paradigm. Like with VR, it's, hey, you're going to put a thing on your head and be seeing stuff around. Wait, that probably means you can't use a keyboard because you can't see. Like all early generations of VR didn't have pass-through. And so, for that reason, we got for VR a lot of things that ended up looking like this.
Yeah, yours doesn't have the tracking.
Oh, this is a typical Oculus or Meta style.
I always forget that the Meta is missing the ring.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Sony one has. And again, there's different styles on different things, but they work loosely with a.
Right, but they are weird and new, even compared to, I guess the closest console comparisons to a Wiimote. But even then, they need to serve slightly different functions than a Wiimote, right?
Yep.
So,
and the same. So with the Metacube, they're having a new control scheme of twisting and turning and tapping,
right?
Because again, no keyboard, and you get all sorts of things in there. Like for them, it's how do you twist the cubes, and keep them connected. They have a series of some really cool. They were showing us patented like little magnet balls on the middle that for each one. So as you put the 8 cubes together and they twist around, they pass information back and forth. They can tell which screen is which. They have the 24 small LED screens on it. They need processing per cube in there, but can link together. So kind of a distributed style of processing. You need a battery per one and a charging per one. You have to think about battery life, how it's all together. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff around designing the hardware, in addition to all of the things you'd normally think of, like processors and GPUs and hard drives. And
right. And it's also worth noting, you're designing on a treadmill, or you're designing in motion, because as you design the thing, the market and technology are moving.
Yeah,
right?
You're looking, you're like, if this is going to come to market in 5 years,
right,
you're starting to design saying, well, this is where batteries are at now. What if I say 3 years more in advance for batteries? What do we think they're going to be? Or for processing, or for, display, or because you're going to iterate. You're going to make the thing you think works, look at it, play around with it, and then you'll make your V2 and your V3 and your V4, getting yourself to the point of commercial hardware.
And if you're one of the bigger companies that has an existing relationship with the supplier or manufacturer of those components, you probably have a head start on what exactly that's going to look like. But if you're breaking,
or you're going to build it yourself. Sony's going to be like, hey, let's partner with, who was it this time? It wasn't NVIDIA. Who would they partner with for their chip? Like, they designed custom circuits specifically. Like, same with, like, if you're really big, you can just go in to a large group and say, we're going to be selling tens of millions of these. It's worth building our own custom chipset and everything else.
Right. And so
that's a luxury you don't have necessarily if you're smaller.
Yeah, if you're breaking in, right, in addition to being under funding constraints, meaning that you need to get this right in as few tries as possible, preferably one, you don't have access to all the information, right, that other existing members of this community have. Right, you have to break in.
Oh, you may or you may not. Like, the CEO, it was interesting, who, not the founder. We meant both the founder and the CEO there. The founder, who's their CTO, Chief Technical Officer, definitely looked like it. And he was very passionate about it. The CEO, his name was Napoleon, what was it, something? He directed the last 2 Ninja Turtle movies. And I believe before that, he was the head, I think it was of Nokia in America. Sure. I might be, it was some big tech thing. So, like, one of the reasons you bring in a CEO like that is they might have the connections from what they used to do to be able to say to people, this will be big. We should be partnering with us on these. Like, you hire for connections in that point. So maybe, who knows? Like, maybe they will have it, but that's still like all of the, and this is still also not just the components you're sourcing, but again, the technological solutions you have to fix. In this case, the 8 interlocking things that all seamlessly move and transition between each other while passing information and letting them know where they exist, while maintaining touchscreen and tap and rotation capability, with all of the hardware distributed with them and a good battery life, etc. So cool. That's a lot of hardware to work on. Yeah. Straight up.
Versus...
Oh, go ahead. Versus an existing console, where you can come in and you're like, we've solved, if they 10 years if this is successful and 8 years from now, they're like, let's make the WoW Cube 2. They're going to be starting from the basis of, we know it made a successful WoW Cube 1 and all the tech there.
Right. Think about
when PlayStation goes to make the next PlayStation, they're iterating on all of the stuff from before, and maybe they're adding a new thing or two, or removing a thing. Like, hey, we don't need, physical media anymore. Sometimes it's reductive. No physical media, because we now have much better internet capability and a significantly larger hard drive. And that isn't saying there isn't a lot of amazing design work that goes into there. There is. But they're not having to solve every hardware problem. They're choosing which problems to solve to make the next thing better.
The Switch 2 is a fantastic example of this, right? They came in with a set of deficiencies in the Switch 1 and fixed exactly those and found some interesting ways to do it, right? A dock with a fan in it. That's a good one. That's a really good, really weird, excellent solution to the problem they were having of it overheating, right? And all of that's only possible because they're working on a decade of Switch 1 data, right? Because the data from the first one's important. Okay, so
cool. Hardware. But then, of course, one of the things that nobody thinks about is you have to write an OS or an operating system for your new custom hardware. You're not just designing the hardware, you're designing the software that it runs on, equivalently the Windows or the iOS or the Android operating system. And again, you can start, at least here, you're not starting from scratch. There are other examples of how to do these, but this has to be the system that runs all of your hardware, optimizes for it, and still lets people bring in and run other software on top of it or apps on top of it.
But some of these, particularly VR and particularly the WoW Cube, right? One of their assets is also one of the downsides of getting the OS fully debugged and working correctly, which is you don't use a keyboard. So if I'm writing it like an Xbox is fundamental, the OG Xbox is fundamentally a Windows PC that's just got a very specific version of Windows running on it, right?
Yep.
So then now at this point the PlayStation is too. Nintendo's got their own whole thing, but Nintendo has a lot of practice with debugging systems that don't use
Nintendo
keyboards.
being Nintendo.
Yeah, and it's just Nintendo being Nintendo. But here, no keyboard. No keyboard for the WoW Cube. No keyboard for your VR headset. What do you do, right? And those
actually, no game controller either.
Yeah, you can't have a debugging menu, right? So if it doesn't work, it's harder to troubleshoot. It's harder to test if it works, right? There is an additional layer of complexity here. Anytime you're breaking the mold on how you interact with the OS, right? You're writing OS for a thing that doesn't exist and has never existed is different than writing OS for a standard touchscreen, a standard console, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And again, here existing consoles they know what they're running on. They have dedicated systems.
Yep.
They've been improving it incrementally along the way. And so again, the hardware and the OS on top of it. So like when Meta or Oculus was developing, their first, the Gear and the Go, later the Go and the first Rifts and everything, they were both working on the hardware, but all of the software that made that hardware run and displayed the 3D stuff that you could look at. And they had to be doing both at the same time. This is interesting. And actually, let me tell you, as an early developer, working with a group that is continuing to update their hardware and their operating system while you're trying to build a game is an extra tricky challenge because they want to keep doing updates because they're trying to make their stuff better. They do them a lot. And what they aren't necessarily thinking, how does this impact the developers that have been deving for early games for us? Because at the end of the day, they're like, do we want our thing to be better? Or while we sabotage all the work they've been doing? Well, they want their thing to be better.
Yeah.
So extra complexity.
Yep.
So anyway, hardware design, operating system, and with both with the WoW Cube and from VR, you need a whole user input and user interface new paradigm. Like completely. That's how VR ended up with things like these, and later with like looking at some where your hands are, where your eye tracking. How do you interact with this game hardware and operating system and display that they've put together? And you have to figure that out. Like one of the biggest things, like doing early VR development, was figuring out, where do you put your interface? Because on a computer monitor, you can like dock it up against the edge of the screen, and people are used to that.
Right.
There is no edge of screen in VR.
Right.
Like even basic things that you're like, oh, well, of course we do that. You're like, oh, wait, that doesn't exist. Oh, and look, is it static? If so, when I look that way, suddenly there's basic questions and people figure it out. But all of the basics that you took for granted on these other things don't exist. The WoW Cube is going to have exactly the same. Where do they put the part, the interface that you're looking at? How do you interact with it? Well, I can twist it. I can tap it. Like I was looking, one of the things for like exit was like 3 tap, thumb, but if so, maybe I'm misremembering, but like there has to be a way in some cases to like say yes, say no, kind of the input style stuff. But what that also means is you're then setting up the paradigm. Every game or system that interacts with this, if this is the standard paradigm, then also has to use that for how they operate, which may or may not hamper the thing that they actually want to make.
And one of the things that like VR came up with eventually was like that, what I'm going to call like the UI belt, right? The idea that like down in front of you, somewhere like at the edge of your peripheral vision in front of you, that's where your UI lives. That's where if you've played a lot of VR, you know that that's where it lives for a lot of games. I'm thinking Pistol Whip. Beat Saber doesn't. Beat Saber does it in the distance, which is cool.
Alex, yes, it does. Sorry, keep going. Well,
the main menu, right? And again, that it's sort of a chicken egg thing, right? You need to establish what it is, but it also needs to work in all of the apps that are going to be in the system, right? So there needs to be some amount of conversation on that.
And it also has to be like how you want to use it. Do you want people in VR constantly looking like, and again, it's part of just how you end up building the thing. And so again, existing consoles for their UI and input, they have controllers. They have edges of screens. Like they know how this works. Where new groups coming in, that's another set of problems to solve and possibly whole new bits of hardware to build on top of it. So when Oculus was building their VR stuff, they also had to be building and prototyping all of their controllers to work with it. It'd be the equivalent of saying, hey, we're making computers. We're also figuring out mouse and keyboard.
Right. And
so extra thing to solve.
Yeah. And for small groups, right? So we've got, well, let's say we've solved all these hardware problems. We've got something that looks like an OS. We've got a first version of our UI and our input device. And now we need to test it because, and there's sort of two parts to this, right? One, big companies already have testers for all of the things that they do. Nintendo has testers, Sony has testers, Microsoft has testers. And the other one is everyone knows how a PlayStation controller works, or their target user base does, right? And it's relatively straightforward, right? Ditto the Switch controller, ditto the Xbox controller. They need to actually get a version of the WoW Cube and just put it in someone's hands and see what the person does, right? That like user and user experience testing is a huge thing for new paradigms. I am 100% confident, without knowing anything, that there is years of footage of people wearing goofy prototype VR headsets falling on their butts. 100% confident, because you have to...
Or accidentally throwing their controllers through TV screens. Or like stepping into tables and falling. All of the stuff... or even just trying to figure out how to make it work. And so user and usability testing are something that isn't also a one-time thing. It's we've made a thing. Let's see what people actually who aren't us and don't know how it's supposed to work, use it. Oh, well, that didn't work, or that part did. And it's an ongoing process. And this is, again, one of those things that's just, it's expensive. This isn't like $100 million expensive, but it is taking time to actually go test the stuff you want to test with groups of people that don't know how to use it. Right.
And importantly, and this is a weird one, we've talked about this a bit with testing before, you need to continually find a supply of people who have never interacted with your product before, because you only get to run people through first-time user experience testing for a product once. Right? Because after that, they've learned something about your product, and they're not going to be as useful for, hey, we need like this person knows nothing level testing. They're very useful for other things, right? Like experienced testers are good, but you do need a ready supply of people who have no idea what you're making, and that is tough.
And so if you've solved all of these, you then start getting into manufacturing. All of the logistics around, here's all the pieces I need. How do I get them all and get them all made at a price point that we can afford for each one, for each hardware generation? Because, for example, when we were doing early VR dev, I think I ended up receiving over a 2-year period, 3 or 4 different prototype hardware sets. It's like, here's the early Rift. Here's the mid Rift. Okay, this is the one we think is going to be actually the consumer launch version of the, like, it kind of keeps going like that, because the early hardware that you're like playing around with isn't going to be the same hardware that you're going to go to mass market or mass market with. And because you need developers making things before your game comes out, if you want them to have stuff to release when your game or when your console comes out, you have to be getting them hardware that's good enough. So you end up going through generations of hardware even before launch. And all of these are things that you're probably not good at building. Like, unless your, dev team making the console also happens to be a manufacturing team, maybe you hand make the first couple, but that's not ideally or that is not a long-term solution.
And as we've discussed a couple of times, as we've discussed our Kickstarter, which is running now, you can go find it.
Oh, we'll do a Kickstarter check-in after.
At the end, yes. The number of units of a thing that you are ordering often dramatically changes the price per unit. Right. And so if you are a small company, small funding, small thing, you are going to pay more per unit, even if the materials value is roughly equivalent to a larger company ordering more units, right? So again, this is another place where the bigger existing names have a lot of advantage here, because they can say, all right, great, we've got the PlayStation X all lined up and locked in. We're going to pull the trigger for 10 million units. And a small company might be like, I'd like 100,000 of these, please. And the price per unit is radically different for 10 million versus 100,000, right?
And actually, a big studio or a big group like Microsoft might even have enough leverage to be like, hey, we want you to make all of our test and dev kits at this price because we're going to make up for it by then ordering, 10 million of the final hardware for it. It's probably actually a partnership where they just get stuff along the way for that one set of mega orders coming up at the end. Yeah. And actually, to give you an interesting thing, Will, I don't know if I ever told you this. When we got quoted on postcards this year, I think it was postcards. It might have been something else, but let's just say postcards for the moment. It ended up being cheaper to order, I think it was 1,500 of them than 1,000. We hit this price point where it cost us less to order 1,500 of them than it did to order 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
It blew my mind that we were paying less money total to get 1,500 sets of postcards than 1,000 sets of postcards.
Yeah.
Because once they set up the machines to run, but there are certain things on physical manufacturing that are just, you don't think about. But anyway, I don't want to get too deep into that, but let's just say the logistics around getting the hardware made that you've designed for the operating system and, all of this other stuff is its own whole set along the way. Again, existing consoles have these relationships. New groups coming in have to find the group that they can work with to actually do this.
Right. And I guess this kind of goes here and it kind of goes into promotion. I guess I want to talk about it here real quick. One of the problems with that price break point too is that, and we'll talk about this a lot more later, just hold in your mind, when I am convincing you to buy something that you don't have any experience with, the cheaper I can make that thing, the more likely you are to be convinced to buy it, right? It's why...
the better the value proposition, and price is always a measure in there.
Exactly. And so that's another big obstacle facing them, is that in addition to it just costing more to make them, they have to set their price higher or eat a loss somewhere, which is difficult to see funding problems. So, okay, so we're making it, manufacture, it's been tested. We've got an operating system, an input, and all of that. And now what?
Here's a fun one people also don't think about. Okay, Will, so we've talked about you've got to be good hardware designers. You've got to be good operating system designers. You need to be able to manufacture and source and make all your UI and paradigms. There are whole companies that just do specific kinds of things like that. Here's a whole nother thing. Here's another thing you need to build that some companies, it's all they do. You need to build a storefront. So at the end, and this doesn't sound particularly exciting, but Steam is a storefront. That's what Steam does. Valve, they're part of, does other things, but Steam is a storefront. Every console at this point needs its own storefront. If you're the PlayStation, the Xbox, the Switch, if you're selling, or if you're an iPhone, any other group, you got to be able to sell your stuff. So this means setting up an entire storefront. This means putting in the ability to populate. This means being able to do regional operations. Storefronts have digital storefronts have different requirements, usually on a per country basis. selling things in the United States versus the UK versus Brazil, you're going to need to be able to set up different pricing, the ability to operate with different regions and their age ratings and their restrictions, and getting things localized, having possible government approval if you're in China or other, like just standing up a storefront can be a massive operation. Like League of Legends, my guess is the storefront team is over 100 people.
Yeah.
Just to be able to have their game and sell things across the world and run all like this is, it doesn't sound like it's not a sexy thing, but oh my goodness, if you can't sell stuff, sell games for your console, you're probably not going to do well.
Right. And then in order to sell games, one must first, get this, have games.
Right. Which means you, most likely as the group making it, the first party, need to go make an initial set of games and applications for that. You're hoping other people will do it later, but you need to have enough things that you can show off on it and to have done enough of this development yourself to be like, oh, we obviously should have put these couple things in our operating system because as we're making games, we realized we left them out.
Right. No one is going to make games for your system if you can't prove that games can be made for your system. Right. It's both it's proof of concept. It's working out all of the bugs. It's also making it so that you have there's a perception. Right. And we've talked about this in the past. It's not fair. Right. But Nintendo's probably the easiest example of this. Nintendo first party titles are given a much grander fanfare and I would say, in my experience, less scrutiny than some of the third party titles, right? That are sort of the also rans of Nintendo consoles, right? So you need flagship first party titles. You need the thing that is the reason that someone will do the thing, right?
Actually, it doesn't have to be. Like Nintendo is a good example. And actually, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft all own multiple development studios just to be able to put out badass first party titles and show it off. And this is, again, one of the reasons that I think Oculus had such trouble is Oculus they came up with good, here's a couple of experiences, like things to show off VR, but they had experiences. It wasn't a thing you're like, I'm going to go do this for 20 hours. It was stand on top of this cool skyscraper and look down and see how tall it is.
Yeah.
And
Steam's version of that is excellent. There's a Steam VR version. I don't know if you've played it, but it is essentially a series of experiences in Valve properties. And each of the experiences left me wishing that I had more time and more experience in those experiences. Like there's a thing where you do robot repair with Atlas and Wheatley from Portal 2. And it's great because it's all Portal 2 humor. There's like a whole bit where you like accidentally open a drawer full of people and they recognize you as their god. Like it's ridiculous, right? But it's not a game, right? In fact, it makes other games feel, you also have to be careful because it makes other games feel worse in comparison because you're comparing them to the mini experience demo that got put out. And you're like, what? Valve did why can't you?
Valve made what was a 5-minute polished demo.
Right.
You know, probably with the budget of a small game.
Yeah, exactly.
But and so making things, because if you want to get your third party, which we'll talk about in a sec, excited about it, you have to be able to show them they can make cool stuff. In addition to telling them that, hey, it's going to work and the hardware is going to sell a lot so you can do all of these things too.
You also need to cover all of the boring application necessities, right? Like no third party is going to design the super boring like utility stuff that's kind of the next level up from the OS.
The stuff you can't sell. So like if you look at the WoW Cube, they had that cool little aquarium like screensavery thing, or just like you can play with. Like nobody's going to go design a free aquarium app for WoW Cube for them that you can't sell. That's the thing. They need a couple things like that are just on there that you're like, oh, that's neat. I wouldn't pay money for it, but I'm glad it's on the thing I bought.
Yeah.
And so if nobody's going to go build it for you, you got to build it yourself. And you need to, and you know, probably some basic things. They probably want a clock app and a calendar app, or at least things that integrate with your iPhone to like bring that data over, or your Android phone, and display those on there for you. And like Meta, the WoW Cube looks like it's going to allow you to have a app on your phone that you can basically use to install software on your WoW Cube, the same as Meta does for, I can use my phone to install software on my VR headset. Like it's the control I use for that.
And just use my computer.
You can do, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, you can do
mine's a
both or
plug-in,
either.
so mine plugs into my PC rather than being a freestanding. But that's okay.
But yeah, so like all of that boring stuff, you have to build yourself as well. Because you want, in addition to the stuff you build, you want a whole bunch of other people to come in. Actually, no, Richard, it is a console. They're using iPhone as a controller in the same way that I can load games onto my Xbox with my phone. I can load games onto my PlayStation with my phone. That just interface
to your PC.
Or to my PC. Yeah, like nowadays, every console actually allows you to use your phone to access the console storefront and or things you've bought and remotely install them on.
Yep.
And it's weird because it makes them all feel less independent. You're right. It makes it feel like it's not its own thing, but that's just, it's a thing nowadays.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got first party stuff handled. We've got all the boring applications. We've got a suite of sweet first party games. Now we need to get more games, get more applications, get more cool, shiny stuff. How does that work?
Well, so you basically you start doing outreach. You start telling people, hey, we got this amazing new thing coming out and you could have one of the early games on it. And maybe because you're one of the early games on it, you're going to become the next Halo. You're going to be the thing that people remember about that particular console, or you're going to be the Beat Saber, the one that people are like, this is the thing, and I get to sell lots of copies for it. And you promise them that you're going to sell lots and lots of hardware, because again, that if you have 100 iPhones, you could sell 100 copies of Angry Birds. If you have 1 million iPhones, you could sell 1 million copies of Angry Birds. You have to sell them there's going to be a lot of these. So therefore, if you make a good thing, you could make a lot of money. Because developers know that it's risky. And so you have to do the outreach. And usually this is so risky that most groups end up funding some early developers to come make software for them. They say, we will de-risk this for you. We'll end up paying X amount of dev budget if you come make a thing exclusively for us, or if you take an existing thing and you port it over so that it can run on our stuff. And this is also expensive. Like Oculus was actually a little bit famous for not doing a lot of third-party funding for games. They funded people to make experiences, but because I think they could do it for less.
Yeah. I do want to point out, too, that that is another disadvantage, right? You can't port FIFA, Call of Duty, Halo, Spyro, Mario. You can't port any of that to a new paradigm easily, right?
Because it's a new paradigm.
Right, because it's a new paradigm. There are some games that have VR modes stapled onto them, some better, some worse, which is a bit of an exception. But I will say that for something like the WoW Cube or a truly new paradigm, it's a totally different proposition, because you lose out on the ability to go to existing developers with existing products and say, hey, you can't play Slay the Spire now I would say you can't play Balatro, but I feel like that would be challenging LocalThunk to make this thing run Balatro, and I don't feel like losing that bet today, but I'm going to say it's probably unlikely you can play Balatro on the WoW Cube.
And at least in its current state without modification.
Right.
Like they actually had a pretty cool demo of Cut the Rope on there, or not Cut the Rope, the pipe one that was one of the ones there was I think they have it on their landing page or something.
Yeah.
But instead of like their paradigm is you shift the cubes around to connect the pipes to get the water flowing down to the thing.
Yeah, instead of being colors, it's a continuously iterating Rubik's Cube where you need to create new solutions based on the levels. That's cool. I like that.
They actually had a pretty cool like little driving one where this car's just going down the road and you have to keep getting road in front of it by like twisting and getting road from different segments so the car can keep driving and not crash into the edge.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, that's cool too. But again, that's making use of the new paradigm to show it. So funding, outreach, funding, and then you need to set up a whole group of liaisons that internally know what's going on with your stuff to then talk to all the developers to be like, hey, we're actually not launching in 3 months, it's now 6 months. Or, hey, if you want to be featured in our launch stuff, here's when you need things in by. Or just to go between, oh, it's like, you guys keep having this bug. That does seem like a hardware bug or an operating system bug. Let's talk to the dev team and see if we can get that. Like, you need to hire a whole group of people to interface with your third-party developers during the development phase while they're doing all of this. And then possibly some sort of certification program to make sure that the stuff they're handing you is actually good and not buggy. Because the last thing you want is all of your third-party or all of your cool new software that people are going to try being stuff that doesn't make your platform look good.
Yep.
Like, that'd be bad.
Yeah.
And then you need to handle all of this while you are doing OS software, marketplace software, and all of your other software updates and hardware updates, because you're still doing development. Like, when Sony says, hey, we're making the next PlayStation, and they're trying to get a group to start deving a game 2 years before the new PlayStation comes out so it can be a launch title, they've already done a lot of hardware work at that point. And they have basically dev kits of what they think it's going to be. But even then, like, having worked for on some of these things, deving for a system hardware that isn't out yet just takes longer, and it's harder because I guarantee no matter how much they've thought it through, some of the things are going to change, and that makes you change your game to update around it. Yep. And so you also have to get developers that are willing to work with you while you keep changing the architecture they're building on.
Yeah. I also think that there's a thing we may have glossed over too, which is as you're doing all of these third-party things and as you're updating stuff, you also need to be thinking about, when we're thinking about storefront, how you're going to get updates and data to all of the people around the world. Are you doing one data center? Are you doing multiple data centers? How does that work? How,
So I didn't cover that under regionalization, but like you equivalently need some sort of base of operations in a per territory basis.
Right. And again, that's another big leg up that the existing console manufacturers have, because they've already got all those, right? They've already got all that stuff worked out. They've already done all of they have such a firm foundation on so many of these things that they don't have to solve these problems, but they are problems. They're just pre-solved for them, right? When a new console tries to break in, no luck, right?
It's another thing you have to build.
Yep.
And so you've got all of this going. The next thing you have to, and again, each of these can be things that entire companies and big ones do. The next thing you have to do is promote it. You have to start letting people know this thing that didn't exist before exists, and this is why you should get it.
Right.
You're having to sell them on a whole new thing that they never knew they needed, because before this, they didn't need it. And you have to convince them they did, and that it's good enough. They should spend their hard-earned dollar bucks buying this thing that beforehand they existed perfectly well without needing. And one of the whole points about entertainment technology is it's usually never needed. You don't need a new Xbox. You don't need a new TV. Like, they're nice, but you can usually continue existing on either not having one or using the one you already had. I'm going
to go out on a limb. I'm going to say this is the hardest part of the whole thing. Right?
And this is where VR actually had its failure. Yeah. Is like they solved all the others to a greater or lesser degree, but they just couldn't convince people that they needed VR hardware.
Right. And this is where, dear audience, I ask you to hearken back in your mind's eye to your first impression of the WoW Cube. Right? This is going to be their big struggle.
Can we show it again on screen?
Yeah, I can. Give me a second. I saved enough
keep
of
going
that.
While you show it and keep going with that line. Be right back.
Do that thing. Right? Lots of people's first impression of this device was, why in the world do I need this? Right? We've talked about, they've got all their hardware stuff covered, right? They've come up with solutions to a lot of these problems. There are prototypes that exist. They're working on this last part, but the big hurdle that they are going to have to overcome is, this is weird. Why should I spend money on it? Right? And that's a valid question that consumers should be asking. And it's a big, hurdle that needs to be overcome, again, which is compounded by the lack of market presence, right? So Nintendo's got it real easy, right? We are Nintendo. this is the Switch 2. And everyone goes, it costs too much. And then it has the best launch for a console ever, right? Sony goes, it's the new PlayStation. And everyone goes, oh my gosh, it's a new PlayStation. It can do more polygons in the place of the thing and everything will look better, right? But this is not a new version of a thing you know, and lots of people are correctly skeptical about its place in their life, right? That's why this is so hard, right? It's not just replacing a thing that you already have or filling a need that you're aware of, right? It's convincing you that there is a need and that this thing fills it, right? The best they can do is convince people that, like, you need a fidget toy, right? And I'm certainly as guilty of that as anyone. Most of you have noticed that I shuffle magic cards during some of these shows when I need to keep my hands busy, right? But do I need a digital fidget toy? Ooh, that's a different question that becomes a difficult proposition, right? Again, which is harder, like, that can be solved with advertising dollars. But they don't have advertising dollars because see the previous problems with getting funding and how it's more expensive to make the console and how it's more expensive to do all the stuff.
Maybe it can be solved with advertising dollars. Like Oculus spent a lot of money, a lot of advertising dollars, and still had trouble convincing people that it was a needed thing enough to like spin up critical mass. And Nintendo for the Wii spent a staggering amount of money on their PR campaign. What was it?
We would like to play
with you or something like that, where they had these two like Japanese Nintendo representatives like going out to all these different places, and it was bowling alleys and kids parties and retirement homes and other things, and basically setting up a Switch, and then you'd see lots of pictures of people playing with it.
Yeah, it's the We Would Like to Play campaign. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it was a brilliant campaign. Like they put it everywhere.
Right.
And a lot of people were like, "Oh, that looks like fun." Like they made their case on it.
I also think in the Wii's case in particular, the key thing that helped the Wii with its promotion and that is one of the things that led to it being such a stellar success was bundling Wii Sports with the console.
Oh yeah,
because
that was their killer app.
It was their killer app, and it was the number one thing that people could do with someone else who didn't understand the Wii in order to show them the need that the Wii was filling.
Come play tennis with me.
Right. And so that is very difficult to do because it's very hard to do that for VR, right? Because it's hard to help someone with VR because you're not seeing what they're seeing. And a significant portion of the population, at least for launch VR, got VR sickness. And a significant portion still does. It's just better now than it was then, right? But here,
and in this place, I would say the WoW Cube is going to have an easier time than VR, at least on the like showing your friend the thing.
Yep.
Because it can sit. One of the most brilliant parts of that little fish tank thing, the fact that it sits on basically a little charging platform and can do that all night long. So you can put it out somewhere, and they're really pretty. Like it'd be a cool display piece just to leave in like the background or on a dresser or a shelf or something, kind of charging and having the little fish go around, or you hook it up to like your calendar and try, like you can leave it out in a nice place and people be like, oh, that looks good. Like that's kind of cool. What is that? VR definitely had a problem on that. And this is going back to other consoles, the fact that they're made to be the hub of your living room, like all of them have specifically gone out of their way to be like, oh, you want to watch Netflix on this? You know, you want to do this, you want to do this, you want to watch your Disney, through it, let's hook it into the TV, means that it's on and getting used for a lot of people. And the fact that other people watch you play it, it makes it easier to show off. And again, the big thing here is those consoles have the 50 plus year history of people playing games on it that just looks natural, that this is a whole new thing in a whole new place that they don't know if they need.
And I think it's also fighting the Rubik's Cube reputation of being a nerd toy. Rubik's Cubes frustrated people, right? And still frustrates some incredibly intelligent people who don't have the spatial reasoning, right? Yeah. I saw someone mention that their password was right inverted, right down. And like, that was a great joke. And most of chat probably missed it, right? That like, people don't know Rubik's Cube notation or don't like, it is like a thing that doesn't have market saturation. And that is potentially hurting.
Yeah.
That
actually... Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But what I meant was VR, for most people, the headset gets shoved in a corner or something. Where the WoW Cube is at least pretty enough and sits on a tiny little charging platform that you can leave it somewhere that people can see it. Sorry, that's all I meant by it, is that this has a pretty kind of non-active use version with like fish tank or other thing, or as a clock or something that you don't feel bad about leaving it out, where most people don't want a pile of VR gear like sitting in the middle of their living room.
Yeah. Okay, and then so you've all right. So let's go through this. So you've developed a console. You've got killer apps for it. You've decided how you're going to convince people that they need it, and now it is time to put this thing precarious on it, out into the world so it can take its first teetering steps. And now we have another huge problem.
Okay.
You have to launch this thing. And that seems like an obvious statement, but God, is it easy to screw up a launch? Like, if you launch it at the wrong time in the wrong section of the news cycle, it gets stepped on by another console. It gets stepped on by a different toy. It gets, right? Imagine that, not exactly, right? Because it won't be a Tickle Me Elmo, but imagine that the WoW Cube comes out and a different digital fidget toy comes out like a week before, and they couldn't move the launch, and there's nothing they can do about it. That just sucks, right? Because now they're having additional competition in a market space that they were already experiencing hardships in, right? Because they've already got all of these disadvantages we've talked about. So how does launch strategy? Yeah.
And again, this is a thing, like, for that, usually you partner with an agency. Like, both for your early, you have to go for promotion, you have to go out and you get your early advocates. Like, if you look on their website, you'll see that they found like Nolan Bushnell, who was founder of the Atari and Chunky Cheese, and a couple of other ones that, like, there's pictures of like them getting shown one and being like, oh, that looks neat.
Right. Or like Steve Wozniak, or any number of nerds. Right. Yeah.
Right. Get your early advocates with your shots or people talking about it, like show it off at this day and age to influencers and other people. And just, you get your early advocates to start talking about it in your launch strategy, which usually involves spending a heck ton of money on traditional and new style of marketing.
Right.
You have to let people know it exists and that they need it.
Right. And again, there's an increased need for spend in that marketing, right? Because they're an unknown. With less access to money to spend, versus Nintendo, who just goes, they could have said, that whole direct where they announced the Switch 2, I swear this is how I feel about it. It could have been one dude in a hoodie who comes out and holds up a piece of cardboard that says, new Switch out June whatever, pre-orders April 15th. And then walked away, and that would have been fine. They went above and beyond because it's Nintendo, right? But like, the need that they have to convey complex information is lower because everyone knows what a Switch is and they get the Switch 2. And they have all the money to spend as much as they want on it, on, a direct and a treehouse for every game, and influencers and actors, and an ad campaign, and standees to send to every place that was going to sell them to put out front advertising things, and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah. And yeah, like, talking to your Targets and your Walmarts and your GameStops and Costco's and everywhere else to like get them in all at the same time, waiting to be released on the same day, and convincing those groups that they all want to buy in that amount of hardware and that you're going to get the right amount in. So because if you have too much, they're going to want to do returns, or they're going to want to discount it. There's all sorts of things about getting, going all the way back to the, manufacturing logistics and to get it to all the distribution places, the store, the physical storefronts in addition, or are you selling them all online? Like it is a thing. And again, that's another one. It costs money. It costs a lot of money, both to get it set up and to get the expert groups to just go help you run it.
Yep.
Like that's where I came into the picture. Like I am part of their launch strategy along with all the other people they were talking to of, hey, look at this thing. Isn't this interesting?
Right.
Like, and starting to build up the hype around for when you can actually go buy one, which is, I think, Q4 this year.
Sure.
Like they want it to be selling by the end of the year. And so that's like, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And so like, we've spent more than an hour talking about, it's like, if you want to make a new console, you need the funding, you need to do all the hardware design with everything there, all of the operating system, all the new UI and input, all of the usability and user testing, all the manufacturing and everything that goes with that. You need to make a new storefront. You need to make first-party games and apps. You need to get third parties interested in developing for you and the liaisons and the funding and everything around that, and all of the promotion set up around it. And a lot of people, when they're thinking new hardware, they're like, oh, cool, it's the tech part. What are they putting together? And that's part of it, but it's just this whole thing, and you have to get all of those right.
Yeah.
It's like if you look back at Oculus got most of those right, but they couldn't make the promotional "you need this for sure" thing, which probably came back to part of what they were making and the third-party apps they funded, and just the cost from the manufacturing, like other things in there ended up leading to it.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And again, looking at this just reminded me of watching Oculus in motion, trying to do all of that at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And being like, wow, this is really, like, there's a reason Lucky sold to Meta. Like Lucky, who was one of the guys who helped found the Oculus, like, and made the first generation of stuff. He got a lot of funding and a lot of stuff. They had a lot of money, but to pull all of this off and make it scale requires building a lot more than just the hardware.
Yep, absolutely. I think there's a stellar example, Geoff, a name which I will say, and which some people will have flashbacks to, and some people will go, what? And that's exactly the point. And that example is the Ouya, spelled Ouya. It was a miniature Android console that was supposed to be a $100 console that launched in 2012. And I
remember going to Ouya promotional events and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Right. And it didn't have all of these problems because it was already on. It just needed to run Android stuff. It needed to run Android stuff that already existed. So it didn't have a bunch of these problems, and it still tanked. Right. Like, and it's kind of funny. I looked up Ouya just to make sure I was spelling it correctly. And I got the people also search for the Virtual Boy, the Wii U, the Dreamcast, and the Atari Jaguar. Right? Even successful companies have had maybe not the best history with some of these, and the new people starting out are even further behind. I do think.
Let's see.
Yeah.
And that actually reminds me of two more, Gaikai, and I think it was OnLive. Which were
OnLive. Oh yeah.
Basically, hey, play everything streamed to your PC, phone, etc. We'll host it in the cloud and run it.
Yep.
Gaikai got acquired by Sony, and I think OnLive folded. But like those had huge amounts of money, basically trying to make virtual consoles.
Yep. OnLive shut down in 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
but like this is hard, and all of those things were backed by large amounts of money.
Yeah.
Like this at least isn't like, here's another console to run your games on that basically replicates the thing you already have.
Right.
This, at least for better or for worse, is offering you something novel on the experience.
Right.
And it's also targeting a lot of STEM style things. Like they're trying to put this in because of the Rubik's brand. Hey, parents, this is a thing you can buy that we can load up with educational challenges and experiences and interactive stuff for your kid. And they've also talked about a lot of like medical and therapeutic uses.
Yeah.
And for physically handling an object and spatial and puzzle and even fidget kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, people are going to look at it and say, it's a console. It is a piece of hardware that runs games, STEM games or not.
Yep. Absolutely so. Well, I think that has been a very interesting little trip down all of these obstacles, trials, and tribulations. Chat, I'm going to give you...
So many flashbacks.
So many flashbacks. Two quick things before we go. First, your comment challenge. Chat, what is your most beloved failed console? What is the thing that you wish had just had one more game, one more killer app? Was it VR? Was it the Ouya? Was it, I saw people talking in chat about Stadia. What was the thing that you wanted so badly to succeed and it just couldn't get there? Let us know in the comments below. And the second one, very importantly, is that we are running a Kickstarter for our history every day, happens every day 2026 calendar. It has 21 days to go, and as of time of recording, it has raised $41,265 from, and that's a great number. Please don't get me wrong. The part that continues to boggle my mind is from 836 different people. That is wild to me, that like almost 1,000 people were like, hey, these goofballs on the internet made some cool art. I want to hang it on my wall every day for a year. To be fair, we did a calendar last year. Actually, hold on. And it was beautiful. So I think people are down for a repeat. But yeah, this was last year's one. We do basically our art style, characters from episodes of history we've covered, and we redraw famous paintings. So this is, instead of the creation of Adam, this is the inspiration of Joan. Yep. Since we did Joan of Arc, showing her inspiration, divinely inspired, or Suleiman and Roxolana's The Kiss for February. Or, I don't know, instead of dogs playing poker, our worst moms and dads in history playing poker. And cheating with Zoe. It's great.
Oh, yeah.
So please go look that up. You can find the Kickstarter links all over our socials and everywhere else if you're interested.
It is running for another 21 days. And we will sell them in our store after, but this is the cheapest you'll ever get them. Yep. And it helps fund us to do more cool projects. But hey, everybody needs a wall calendar. This is a really pretty one with a history fact every day and links to videos we've done. So 2 thumbs up, would recommend. Of course I am biased, but it's a good bias.
That's fair. Okay, I think that's going to do it for our talk today. Thank you so much for joining us. One last programming note, there will be no breakfast on Monday. Matt is away at Gen Con doing Gen Con things. If you're going to Gen Con and you're watching this somehow, go say hi to Matt. Well, otherwise, you missed Matt at Gen Con, and I'm sorry.
He's going to be at the Cyberpunk...
the Cyberpunk Legends card game booth.
Thank you, Legend. Cyberpunk Legends card game booth.
Yep.
Hanging out.
Yeah. But we will be back next week with another design club, so stay tuned for that. Until then, say bye to the people, Geoff.
Bye to the people, Geoff.
Oh,
thanks,
boy.
everybody.
Wait, hold on. I got to do a thing. Wait,
I got to do a thing.
Wait, no, I gotta do the. Oh God.